For years now with my photography, I've liked using filters, ND filters and polarizing filters mostly. However, I always opted for the circular screw-in filters until a few weeks ago when NiSi sent me their V5 Pro square filter holder for a test and a review. And in this video, I want to share my thoughts and opinions on this particular system, and also why I now think I prefer using square filters rather than circle. So firstly, the usual declaration of thank you to NiSi for sending me this. However, this is not paid or sponsored in any way, shape or form. And along with the V5 Pro, NiSi were also kind enough to send me a 0.9 soft graduate ND filter, so I had something to use with it basically. So inside both of these boxes you get these boxes. So these are kind of leather effect pouches that store the filter and also the filter holder. The filter holder box, to be fair, is pretty sturdy. You also get a Velcro pouch on the back, so I don't know, you can attach it to your belt if you want to use it as a fanny pouch. I don't know. The lid of this is magnetic, so it gives you a pretty solid seal, so it's never going to kind of be left open accidentally. Now, while this was being sent to me, I had a quick look online at what the V5 Pro consisted of and had a look at a couple of people's reviews of the V5 Pro. And one thing I saw a couple of people mention was that it was really confusing for them. It was really complicated to get the thing set up on the camera. However, I'll be honest, it took me less than 5 minutes from opening the box to have this completely set up. It's actually not that complicated at all. So you get a few different components that go with it. So this is the actual filter holder, the square plate that the filters drop into. This is an 82mm adapter ring. So this connects into the back of the V5 Pro with the little quick release clip on the side here. You now have a square filter holder that will fit straight onto an 82mm front filter thread. And at this particular junction, you might be saying, Dave, that's great, but none of my lenses are 82mm. Don't worry, because inside the V5 Pro box, you also get 3 step-down rings. So each of these will step down from 82mm, so you don't have to stack them up, and they will drop to either 77, 72, or 67mm filters. So once you've adapted the adapter ring to whatever filter size you need, it simply screws on the front of your lens and you're good to go. Now this V5 Pro does have a little party trick up its sleeve that is different from any filter system that I'm aware of, although I'm not saying that it's the only one that has it, which is that in the box it also ships with this. And I know what you're thinking, Dave, that is a circular filter and this is meant to be a square filter holder. Quite true. This is a circular polarizer, but now it actually screws into the original 82mm adapter ring, so you can use it without the rest of the filter holder if you so desire. But what's neat about this is that on the back of the adapter ring, there's 2 little thumb wheels that are 180 degrees apart from each other. And rotating these will actually rotate the polarizing filter. What I love about this is it allows you to very easily use a mix of polarizing and neutral density or graduated neutral density filters all in the one shot. I tried doing this in the past with circular filters and it just didn't end well, because the polarizing filter obviously spins very easily because you've got to get the angle correct that you need it to be at. However, the neutral density filters that I then wanted to use on top of it were either variable ND filters themselves, which also needed rotating, or was a 16-stop ND filter. So if I put the polarizing filter on, aligned it up, and then tried to screw the ND filter onto the top of it, generally I would then wind up moving the circular polarizer out of position. If I did it the other way around and put the ND filter on first, and then put the polarizer on and try to adjust it, I couldn't see where the polarizer needed to be because it was too dark to see when I was getting the maximum polarizing effect. With this setup, it isn't a problem because the polarizer is completely separate from the rest of the filters. So you can get the polarizer to wherever you need it to be, and then start dropping filters in front of it, knowing that the polarizer hasn't moved. One thing I will say about this polarizer is, while it's a really nice feature to have, it's a fantastic inclusion to be able to have a polarizer within the system. What they've tried to do in order to keep the filter slots as close to the filter holder as possible so that there's no light leak getting in, they've had to make the polarizing filter extremely thin, which makes it an absolute to try and get off without putting fingerprints all over it. It's not too bad when you're trying to remove the filter because you've already taken your photo, but while you're trying to get the filter on, you've got to be careful that you don't start putting fingerprints all over the filter, because it's then obviously going to ruin your image. Now, before we get on to how I've actually found using the V5 Pro, let's just quickly take a look at the filter that NiSi sent for me. There it is. Nah, I'm joking. So this is their GND8. So it's a soft graduated 0.9 ND filter. So that means that this top section up here, the darkened area, reduces the amount of light by 3 stops, but it's a graduated, so the bottom section is actually completely clear. And because it's a soft graduate, that means the transition from darkest to lightest is a gradual one. NiSi do a range of different filters. You can get soft grads, hard grads, reversible grads, ND filters, all of different densities depending on what you're likely to need and what you're likely to shoot. Now, it is worth noting, with square filter systems, so the V5 Pro is a 100mm filter system. You don't have to use NiSi filters with a NiSi holder. This will take any square filter that has a 100mm diameter. I did actually buy myself a 10-stop 100mm square filter off Amazon that was about 50 quid. It wasn't a NiSi, it was some other company that had really good reviews, and from what I've used of it so far, it's... Now, the NiSi filter, at least this one, is more expensive than the ND filter that I tried out. NiSi advertised this as having nano infrared coatings, and they advertise it as being true to life color. And I'll be honest, I've been very impressed with the quality of this filter optically. I've seen no drop in sharpness and no change in colors either, so I can vouch for this filter that it is a very good quality filter. Build-wise, it feels pretty okay. It feels like fairly lightweight metal, which isn't a bad thing because, let's face it, you're not exactly going to be throwing this against a brick wall, are you? I've been using this for a few weeks and there's no signs of any wear and tear on this so far, so in terms of build quality, it is pretty decent. Now, one thing I have noticed about the V5 when using it, and primarily I've been using this, well, obviously landscapes, but I've done a few shots that were firing straight into the sun for sunrises and sunsets. And one thing I've noticed about this is it introduces additional flaring into your shots. Let me quickly demonstrate this by putting this system onto my lens and you can see for yourself. Okay, so I now have the filter holder on my lens, but with no additional optics in there. So the grad filter's not in there, the polarizer's not in there, it's just a bare empty filter holder system. Now, I've got this on the Sigma 35 art lens. The lens is wide open at f1.4, and if I shine my phone into it here, you can see that there's a little bit of flaring that shows up naturally on the lens. Not a huge amount, but there's just a little bit there. Now, if I mount in the polarizing filter, so that is just the polarizing filter on its own. If I rotate that wheel, you can see there, polarizers in place. Now, if I shine my torch in there now, you can see that there's some extra little flaring artifacts that are a little bit more noticeable than without it. Now, if I switch the polarizing filter for just the graduated filter, so that is just the graduate filter on its own. And again, if I bring my torch in here, you can see that there's a little bit more flaring going on. And if I put the two together and bring the torch back in, you can see that that flaring is even more noticeable now. Now, that experiment was done with the 67mm adapter. So it's the biggest extreme, if you like, of stopping down. And if you look there, there's a huge surface area of metal that it's presenting. And I think what's happening is it's not too bad around here because it's kind of out the way. But in here, where the light's being allowed to travel through the holder slightly, I think it's reflecting back off the inside of the step down ring and then crashing back into the filter and then going back into the lens. And so I think it's just creating some additional artifacts that you'd ideally not want. I really noticed it when I was doing my sunrise photo the other week. The original file had quite noticeable flaring. There was a big onion ring flare circle around the picture that I had to end up photoshopping out. But that is only if you're shooting kind of directly at the sun. I found if the sun's off at the edges of the frame, it's not as big a deal. But in all fairness, you go ahead and add extra optics in front or behind a lens, you always run the risk of adding extra artifacts. And the additional creativity and effect that these filters have on your images, for me, far outweighs a little bit of extra flaring and a little bit of Photoshop work to get rid of the flaring. Or maybe you're somebody who likes having extra flare in the pictures, in which case, this is perfect for you. So barring the additional flaring that this produces, there's not really anything bad that I can say about this. It fits the task perfectly. It gives you the circular polarizing facility, which I think is fantastic. My only criticism is that additional flaring, which if I'm correct in my assumption that that is down to just the sheen that is on this material, I think changing the material would make this a fantastic filter. The V5 Pro is currently priced on Amazon at £145. That is the V5 Pro with the circular polarizing filter. The GND8 filter that I've been using is priced currently at £129. Now, like I said, you don't need to use specifically NiSi filters with this holder. You can use any 100mm square filters or 150 by 100 rectangulars. Obviously, just bear in mind though, with any kind of filters, you get what you pay for. So cheaper filters, as I found, don't produce as good a results as more expensive ones. So you have to balance out price to performance and whatever suits you best. But what do you make of the V5 Pro? Is this something that is appealing to you? Do you already have this system? And if so, do you find it good or bad? Or do you have a different square filter system? If so, what? And do you think it's better or worse than this? Leave your thoughts and comments in the box down below. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.